Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 7th, 2017 for the Riverside School District 96 Board of Education. Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Barsadi.
Present.
Mr. Hunt.
Here.
Ms. Kleiber.
Here.
Mr. Marhol.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Ms. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Regan.
Present.
All right, at this time, is there any public comment?
The sign-in sheet.
We do have a sign-in.
There was none, Margie?
No, there wasn't anyone I
Okay.
checked.
Before we get into the presentations, just one little quick business. Board, is there any changes or additions to the agenda that anybody would like to present? No? All right. For that, we move on to the committee meeting, and I'll pass it over to Sherry Kleiber.
I'm going to pass it to Martha for one moment.
All right, I'm going to take our first Education Committee item, and that is our board salute and student recognition. So let me just start by thanking all of you for being here with us tonight. I know it's the last day of school, and it's a really, really busy time of year. I also know a lot of you have probably had an opportunity to be recognized at your individual schools, but we are really excited to have this opportunity for the Board of Education to recognize all of the many different, really very exciting things that are happening here in District 96 and the wonderful students doing all those things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to get us started. I think, Linda, you have the first group.
Yep. All right, so we're going to announce by group. When I'm done announcing, we would like the students to come on up, and you guys can get your photo opportunities if you'd like. So the first group is the WSCAE Art Show. District 96 would like to recognize those students who had artwork displayed in the West Suburban Consortium for Academic Excellence Art Show in April. The work of these students was displayed as part of a larger consortium of districts at Cheney Mansion in Oak Park in April. Congratulations to all the participants. Do we have any participants here today? Come on up.
Get our pictures.
All right, great job, kids. The next group, the WSCAE Science Fair. District 96 would also like to recognize those students who were selected to participate in the West Suburban Consortium for Academic Excellence Science Fair at the Brookfield Zoo. These 5th and 6th graders competed in a district-level science fair to earn the opportunity to showcase their projects at the Brookfield Zoo in February. We had 3 students earn individual awards at the event. Congratulations to all participants. Do we have any of those participants here today? All right, come on up.
While they're getting their photo op, this is posted on the district website in the board packet. So if you want a copy of the slideshow with all their names, you're free to download it at home.
All right, moving on. The District 96 Young Authors. District 96 would like to recognize those students that were awarded 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place ribbons at the District 96 Young Author Recognition event in May. Riverside Brookfield High School National Honor Society students judged the competition and selected the winning works authored by these students. Congratulations to all of our young authors. Do we have any young authors in the crowd? All right, come on over. Congratulations, boys. Great.
Thank you. The Board of Education recognizes our regional Special Olympics winners. We would like to recognize those students who participated and medaled at the Regional Special Olympics competition. 2 of our students will go on to compete in the State Summer Olympic Games. Congratulations to all our Olympians. Are there any Olympians in the crowd? Next are our Hauser Athletic Conference champs. The district would like to recognize the following athletic teams for their conference championships. 7th and 8th grade girls volleyball, 7th grade boys volleyball, 8th grade girls basketball, 8th grade girls cross country, and 6th and 7th grade boys cross country. Cross country launched its inaugural season this year. We also had individual awards for 5 elementary students. Congratulations to all our athletes. Do we have any athletes who would like to come up?
Moving on to academic Bs, we'd like to recognize the winners of the Hauser's Geography, History, and Spelling Bs. The Geography B winner went on to compete at state. All of the 10 History B finalists qualified to move on to the regional competition, and 7 of them qualified for the national competition. That's amazing. The Spelling Bee champion moved on to the regional competition. Congratulations to all our B champions. Anyone here? And moving on, we have a few lumped together, but we have robotics, math, book bowl, and writing contest winners. For the robotics, they went to state competition. The winners of the writing contest, the book bowl winners, and the winners of the 3 mathematic competitions can all come up. We're so proud of their academic talents. I'm sure you spent a lot of time and effort. So come on up, robotics. This is a big group, math, book bowl, and writing contests. They put them together. Anyone here?
Come on up.
That looks like robotics.
Should I take that? I don't need it. All right, the next award is for music, speech, and drama. District 96 would like to recognize the Illinois Music Education Association Music Award winners, including soloists and director award winners. Along with these talented musicians, we would also like to recognize our West 40 Speech and Drama Club members. The Speech and Drama Club club students took home a first place trophy from the West 40 competition in Elmwood Park. Congratulations to all. Do we have any participants here? All right. Come on down.
The next award, the next,
No, it is.
okay. The district would like to acknowledge those who participated in the Elementary Olmsted Society Poetry Contest. These students, for their award-winning poems, entered into the Frederick Law Olmsted Society's Reflections on Riverside Poetry Contest. Our students took home 2 individual first place awards at grade 1 and a second place award at grade 5, with 7 students receiving certificates of merit. Congratulations to all of our elementary budding poets. Are any participants here today? The next one is for Hauser's Olmsted Society Poetry Contest. District 96 would like to recognize our Hauser students for their award-winning poems entered into the Frederick Law Olmsted Society Reflections on Riverside Poetry Contest. Our students took home 1 individual first place award at grade 7 and a second place award at grade 6, with 8 students receiving certificates of merit with honors and 54 students receiving certificates of merit. Congratulations to all of our middle school budding poets. Are anyone here tonight for that? Nice job.
Pictures? Good. All right. Great job, guys.
All right, our next award, let's see, is National PTA Reflections Contest winners. District 96 would like to recognize students from Ames and Hollywood who received awards from the National PTA Reflections Contest in the areas of visual arts and music. Congratulations. Is anyone from the Ames or Hollywood PTA Reflections Contest here? All right, next we have the poster contest winners. District 96 would like to recognize our elementary students for their award-winning posters entered into the American Association of University Women's History Poster Contest. We had 7 award winners and 10 honorable mentions. We would also like to recognize the winner of the Economic Concepts Poster Contest, sponsored by Dominican University. Congratulations. Do we have any of those winners here? Yes, great.
Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations. As a district, we are blessed to have so many talented students among us. We salute all of you and your many achievements and look forward to all you will accomplish in the years to come. All right.
All right.
Would you like to make an announcement that they can stay if they want to?
Thank you
I mean,
so
you can
much
all
for joining
stay
us
if you want.
tonight.
Yes.
We'll continue on with our regular Board of Education Committee the whole meeting, but we know it's a busy night, so thank you for being here.
Good job.
Okay, moving on with the Education Committee
job.
agenda. We're going to be hearing some presentations tonight. I'll give them a minute.
Yeah.
Did you win any writing awards recently? Is this something-
Can we salute you? That's our plan. Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yes.
It's working.
The new board objective. Let's be dull.
Okay, we're going to move on, I think, Martha.
Again, my son wants it.
Yeah, it's okay.
I wanted to know what website exactly. So maybe we could.
Yeah, a lot of good stories in that hallway out there.
That's right. A lot of great students. Hello.
We're like speaking to an empty auditorium now.
a few people sitting there.
Yeah, no. They're all just getting pictures.
Yeah.
The library here?
All right, I think we're going to move on. I see Mr. Gearman and Miss...
Plenty of good seating up front.
Yeah, don't be shy.
No, and we're going to move on with the Positive Behavior Support System presentation, which is not a trivial thing. This is so important that I think we have administrators who are cognizant and aware of how important it is to develop the whole child. So, Kasmira?
Or they could just use
Todd?
Sherry's microphone.
Oh, we have to say by the mic, okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to be recording the screen up there, so.
Is it easier to use one of the handhelds? Would you rather use a handheld?
There you go. You could sit there and
To see the screen.
There you go. Go wild with this. Here. Kids, ready, you want to use this one?
Yeah, I would like that.
Okay. There you go. It goes pretty much, just twist it up a little bit.
Good evening, everybody. We're here tonight to talk to you a little bit about PBSS and explain an overview of what PBSS is, what we have done with this program for the last few years, and where we're going in our next steps. So PBSS stands for Positive Behavior Support Systems, and it's a way to explicitly teach, practice, and recognize positive social expectations across all school settings. So it's basically a skeleton or a structure for defining clear expectations and social expectations for students, determining a way to explicitly teach those expectations in all settings in the buildings. We have procedures for reinforcing positive behaviors. We also have procedures for redirecting students when an unexpected behavior occurs. And then we also have procedures in place for analyzing how we're progressing with the program and how students are responding, and making plans and adjustments to either individual students' programming, social programming, or school-wide or small group programming as well. PBS began in our district in January of 2015. So Mr. Gearman and I had both come from PBIS schools, which is the similar structure, and recognized that it would probably be something that would benefit District 96. And when we started speaking with teachers throughout the district, we heard just kind of a loud cry and echo that in agreement that this is a direction that they wanted to move.
That was a good segue. So in the elementary buildings at Ames, Hollywood, Blythe, and Central, we have three pillars we pretty much have to define the PBSS system. So be respectful, be responsible, be safe. And at Hauser, they have be respectful, be responsible, and be positive. Does not mean at the elementary buildings we're not positive, nor does it mean at Hauser they're not safe, but a little bit different spin on it. So all the elementary buildings are pretty much consistent with this, and it's a common language that we're sharing throughout our schools. So, you know, these are abstract concepts to teach to children. So when you're looking at what is respectful, what is responsible look like, you're modeling that, and you're recognizing students that are doing that, and you're constantly reinforcing. And it's a language that if you were to walk into any of our elementary buildings and ask students what the three pillars are for PBSS, they would say, you know, to be respectful, responsible, and safe. We do it in the morning announcements. And it's the modeling as adults that we do that, and then it eventually goes into the recognition of students as they show these pillars. So we actually, first year when we did this, we did not have these posters, but these are different zones. We have posters at different zones throughout the building. So this is a poster that would speak to the hallway and staircase. And you know, what you're doing to that is you're trying to attach what being respectful, responsible, and safe looks like in the hallway, staircase, bathroom, lunchroom, classroom. So there's these posters all throughout the school. So an example, if you know, the hallway one, being respectful would be bubble space, voice level 0, quiet feet and hands, floor and locker area clean, be responsible, body and materials controlled, shoes are tied, being safe, stay on the right side of the hallway, walk in a straight line, keep hands, feet, and other objects to yourself. And at Ames, we call that keep hands, feet, and other objects to yourself, KH footy. So, you know, if you're walking into Ames and you ask a student what is KH footy, they'll tell you keep hands, feet, and other objects to yourself. And it's really neat because kids see this all the time throughout the school. And if they, you know, it's not like you want to reprimand them every time they do something wrong, but you just, it's a gentle reminder, and you see them, you know, all throughout the building, and they do notice them. And if a poster were to fall down, they're being respectful, responsible, and safe. They're picking it up, putting it back up, so that the rest of the kids can see them.
Hi, my name is Meredith Bolin. I'm a social worker at Blythe and Hollywood. I was invited to help present to you guys tonight. So basically, PBSS has a positive impact on school climate, which also fosters then academic success. It fosters schools that are safe, nurturing, and focused on teaching and learning. If we're not spending all day redirecting student behavior, there's going to be a lot more teaching and learning going on. It also improves student character and citizenship, and when students feel a sense of belonging, significance, and safety, they're more ready to learn. This is the foundation in which school environments promote student growth and achievement. So basically the goal is to establish a climate in which appropriate behavior is the norm. It's much more productive and positive to purposely teach and reward behavioral expectations rather than waiting for a misbehavior to occur and then just responding to that. So why do we acknowledge positive behaviors? What we pay attention to expands and grows. Acknowledgement delivered after the skill is taught will increase the likelihood that new positive behavior will continue and convey that the new behavior is more desirable than the old behavior. So the goal is to make the positive or new behavior more rewarding than the old behavior in general. Positive reinforcement encourages students to demonstrate a behavior. The concept is that the rewards you flood the student with rewards initially, and then you could pull back and fade a little bit, reducing the reinforcers. So eventually, it would become a intermittent reinforcer. So you try and catch the student doing it good once in a while, but you flood them with a ton at the beginning so that they start to associate the behavior with a positive reward.
So speaking of the positive rewards, and that flooding is huge. So in the beginning, we're using dolphin dollars at Ames. They're using Bulldog, A-Paws. Is that it?
Bulldog paws, yeah.
Bulldog. That's Blake. Bulldog.
Like a, yeah.
Sort of.
Little play on words.
Dolphin dollars, Bulldog paws. So yeah, so we use those. We really flood the kids. So when you see them being acting responsible, acting safe, being respectful, you want to acknowledge that, and they collect these, and it's really meaningful to them, and it's not like they're asking for them. It's really, flooding them with that so they can see that their good behavior is being recognized. And it's really neat to watch kids, and especially at the primary, where they will recognize that another student did something really respectful, responsible, and you get a dolphin dollar or a bulldog paw. So it starts getting contagious. And like Meredith said earlier, you can back off a little bit as the year progresses. So you take these, and it's really about, attaching that, it's like a token economy system. You're attaching it to what they're doing. So I'm not going to just go up to Ms. Murphy and say, here's a dolphin dollar. I'm going to say, Ms. Murphy, I really like the way you're being respectful and paying attention during this presentation. Here's a dolphin dollar. That's your attention to a dolphin dollar. So what you do then is the students collect these dolphin dollars, and then they go into a raffle, and each teacher picks out, students that are going to just a random raffle, and they participate in school-wide celebrations. We just had Staley the Bear at Ames. That's a neat show to see. So he came out and did 2 presentations, one for K-2 and one for 3 to 5. And it's really celebrating that positive behavior, and the kids just love it. We do stuff like Crazy Hair Day, Minute to Win It games, student versus teacher kickball games. It's just flooded with positives, but really recognizing that the reason we're doing this is because you exhibited these great behaviors.
I think it's really important to point out, because that might be a question at the end, is that we all believe that intrinsic motivation is what we want our students to have. We want them to be intrinsically motivated to make the right decisions, and we know that children at the heart of it are good, and they want to make the right decisions and the right choices. And the reinforcements that we picked, this was a really careful discussion among the PBSS team and among all the schools, that we designed something that made sure that the most important part of it was what Mr. Gearman said, was that qualitative feedback about what they were doing, and that when we did do celebrations, that a lot of them sometimes they have the individual raffles, right, but most of the celebrations that we do are school-wide celebrations that have that indirect, benefit of just building community and positivity within the culture of the school. So we really thought that through, because we really do always want to make sure that we have that bridge to the intrinsic motivation.
And we also had one more thing there. We also have to be sensitive to the developmental needs of students. Dolphin dollars aren't as cool to a 5th grader as they are to a 1st grader, right? So we use Class Dojo. So there's other ways to have that kind of reward system in place, all tying into the same end result.
So these are the 3 really important points. It's going to kind of transition a little bit to what we're looking at right now, what we did this year in 2016-17, and what we're going to be doing in the future. So we know that improving academic success in our children, we must also improve their social success. So the 3 things that Meredith Boland had mentioned earlier, our students need to have that. Before they're ready to learn, they need to feel a sense of safety, they need to feel a sense of belonging, and a sense of significance, that they're important in that culture and in that community. And if they don't have those 3 feelings, if they don't have that present across all areas of the school settings, they're not really truly ready to learn. And so that's an important part of why we have to bring that social curriculum in and have to have that infused throughout every part of our day. We know that academic and social failures are reciprocally and inextricably related. So that means that oftentimes we will see students, if they are struggling academically, most often you will see that they're somehow struggling socially, either with peers or with a peer-adult relationship. And it's part of our job as educators to help children work through that and to find remedies so that they can be both academically and socially successful. The systems that we develop emphasize impact. The systems we develop and emphasize impact student performance as much as an individual's internal traits. So it's kind of like that nurture versus nature. You know, we come with our own personalities. We see students that have to get along with one another, and they have different, you know, strengths and different areas of growth. They lean towards certain likes and dislikes, and that's, you know, part of their internal chemistry. But it's also, how do we respond to that? How do we teach tolerance? How do we teach students, you know, to display good sportsmanship, to be good friends? So that both those pieces are closely tied and linked, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we teach those characteristics. So this year, there were two things that rolled out. So we did the expectations, clear expectations in the beginning, and we just practiced on getting teachers to reward those behaviors and recognize them throughout all the buildings, and focused on the celebrations. It's just really the positive piece about what PBSS is. But we also know that we have to be responsive to how the students react and how they respond daily in our classrooms, to one another, and just to the system of PBSS in general. And so the student support forum, it's an alternative solution to traditional discipline. So it's not like a pink slip or some kind of thing that goes home to mom and dad when a child displays an unexpected behavior. We usually have a venue for that. It's usually a phone call home or some type of conversation, personal contact with the parent, either to talk about an unexpected behavior or to reward a celebration, which Ms. Bowen will speak about in a little bit. But the student support forum is a way for our staff to track patterns and behaviors. So when something happens, there is a form that teachers go into, and they enter data about the time that the event happened, the peers or other people that were involved, the day, motivation, location. They give a little brief description of what happened. And the idea behind that is to really start to understand. Now, if a child had an infraction one time, their infraction goes into the data system and it just sits there, and nothing ever happens with it. But if there's a child that's struggling socially, and over a period of time, there's a number of infractions that are showing up, then our support team is able to go through and look back and see, you know what, it's always happening at 10:30. You know, maybe the child needs a movement break at 10:30. You know, or you know what, writing's at 10:30. Maybe the child is engaging in an avoidance strategy and always feigning sickness at 10:30 and coming to the nurse's office because he really wants to get out of writing class. And so how do we help that child? And how do we make sure that writing is an easier subject for him? Or how do we provide that movement break so that that child can come back and is ready to learn? So we start to problem solve around the data that we've collected. And that's what is really so important about this student support forum and about looking at that, because it's not about consequencing kids, it's about helping them. And this forum allows us and provides us with a venue to do that.
And the problems, one more thing, the problem solving set is a team. So you have the principal involved in that along with the classroom teacher, you have your psychologist, social worker, you could have a counselor involved in that. So as a team, we're trying to attack this to figure out, you know, where does this issue lie, what's the antecedent to the behavior, how are we going to address this? And it's almost instantaneous that we get on this right away.
We've had a few instances where the data that we've actually collected has helped us with students that possibly needed a functional behavioral assessment and a plan for how to be successful in school. And usually, sometimes reactively, that data will have to be collected after the fact, but the system allows us to be proactive about that. And so it's been a real positive and a real support to both the students and the staff. I'm going to hand over to Meredith, and she's going to talk about the positive recognition form.
Hi, so the positive recognition form was just implemented this year, and basically it's a really simple form that teachers, staff, anyone can complete. That was through our tech department, helped us put it together. And it's just to celebrate anything positive that a teacher, staff, anyone can notice a student doing in school. So the idea is we fill out a quick little form, submit it, and it creates, if you can see, this really charming, positives recognition form that then gets sent directly to parents. So parents get to open up an email with good news about what their child has done at school when they're not there. And that's the parents, as a parent, one of the greatest rewards is knowing that your child did something good when you weren't around. So knowing that there's good things happening at school, it just reinforces what we're trying to teach, and that the student is learning it, they're exhibiting these behaviors, and then the parent getting to see it and celebrating it at home, that now, not just if we made the parent feel good, we've also kind of snuck our lesson in at home too, that this is what we want to see at school. So it's reinforcing the lessons we're teaching at school and making kids and parents feel good along the way. So I guess that's all I have on this one. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I think it's great, because we always talk about that balance of, making sure parents, and that will come back on surveys and feedback forms. We really want to hear that communication. We want to hear what's happening, what's going well in school. And I can't tell you how many parents have emailed back, like, I was at the grocery store and I opened this up and I saw this. It's like, well, I'm glad when you bought bananas you saw this. It's awesome, because it just makes your day. So those are the things that I feel like have really brought that home to a lot of parents, and they appreciate it. And we do get regular emails back saying, thank you for letting me know that my child did a great job today.
We're not picking anything up, we're not doing it in the mic. I just figured that out. If we're talking about the mic, it's going to look like we're just talking without voices, right? Okay. So I want to go back to that form real quick. What's neat about it too is some of the buildings are taking it to the next level and they're announcing it on the morning announcement. So who doesn't like hearing a name on the morning announcement? So after you do the pledge, you're saying, well, this following students are being recognized for being respectful, being responsible, or safe. So it really ties into that, building that whole positive climate and culture within our school community.
So our next steps. So we just had a PBSS committee meeting about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay. And we talked about this book called The Power of Our Words. It is through a program called Responsive Classroom, and a responsive classroom training. And so this book was, just a staple in my classroom and in my personal teaching when I was in the classroom. But it's basically more, if you look at PBS and think about PBSS as like the structure or the skeleton of a social curriculum, now we want to delve a little bit deeper and we want to talk about how does this become part of everyday interactions with students in our language, and how we form guided reading or guided math groups, and how we do morning meetings, how do we engage students in problem-solving conversations. So there's that whole meat of social curriculum, and that's really where I see, and I think the PBSS committee sees our next steps and where we need to go. This book is probably the first step in really delving deeply into that. And it goes through and it talks about just ways that you can curtail or specify your language and your interactions with students that have a big impact. And so it'll teach about very explicit things like sarcasm. It doesn't belong in classrooms, kids don't understand it, they think it's mean, and it shouldn't be there. Teachers, for the most part, are aware of that and know that and are very conscientious of that. But then when I shared with the DLT and I showed the PBSS team, one thing that always stands out in this book is the idea of voiceovers, which might not be so obvious to a teacher. And that is if we are engaging in conversation and I'm leading a conversation, I'm asking students to give me characteristics of a desert, and Ms. Ryan Toy says a dry climate. And I say, great, dry climate. So by me voice-overing her comment, I am indirectly teaching the students that I am the only person that they should be listening to, that I am the leader of that conversation, that they shouldn't be trained to actively listen to one of their peers when their peers are speaking. And so it talks about those little bitty tweaks to our instruction and to our social, the way we interact with students that allow students to create a community of learners, allow students to take risks, to feel that sense of safety, to feel that sense of significance, like they matter in the classroom. And this book is just one of our first steps towards really celebrating that and moving in that direction within District 96.
Take my part, and that's what you want me to take, right?
Sure.
So each building has their own PBSS team, so Ames, One Blythe, Hollywood, Central, and Hauser, but we have a District 96 PBSS committee, and those are some powerful meetings to watch. So we bring each committee, representatives of each committee meet with the E96 committee, and we share what's working, what may not be working, what data we're collecting, and we're constantly pushing the envelope on this. And Ms. Gorman and I are very fortunate to lead this wonderful committee, because we're pushing them to what are we going to do next, what are we bringing forth for the upcoming school year, what's working, what isn't working. And it's really nice to be able to share. You don't want to live in a silo. So getting the whole district together to speak this kind of language so that when we feed into Hauser, this, our students are prepared and they know what good SEL curriculum looks like, social emotional learning.
So essentially, we're trying to, as a district, impart to the staff, which is kind of where we started as a staff, and then teaching out to our own buildings from the ground up. And I think we're to the point where everyone understands that whatever you see in a child is what you will produce. So a child says, I don't become what I think I can. I don't become what you think I can. I become what I think you think I can. So that's the power of our words. That's the power of rewarding that positive behavior when we see it, celebrating it with families, providing or creating that positive culture and climate where our students feel safe and comfortable and ready to learn, and that's the whole goal.
Thank you. I just have a comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, any questions for Kazmira?
I think one of the comments that I wanted to make was regarding that recognition form. And I like the specificity of the comments. Rather than your kid was good today or a good person, I like the way that they listen to others in a meeting. It's very specific. I think that kind of specific feedback can go a long way with the behavior instead of just a general high five, which those are great too. But to get a specific comment, I really think that's great that you're doing the form. Or when you give the paw point or whatever it is, a dolphin dollar, that it's specific. So I appreciate that you're doing that.
I think it goes back to that one slide where I talked about what we pay attention to expands and grows. And so when we say, good job, or awesome, it's like, well, in the moment, it makes that child have a little feel good, but it doesn't really go much further than that. Whereas, like you said, when we say you were such an active listener or participant during group discussion, it's like then you start to, the child starts to resonate, oh, that's an important trait. I need to listen to my peers when we're discussing the book that we're exploring in our classroom, or the math problem that we had to dissect. So.
And just gonna add one thing, and piggybacking on that, it's neat when kids do it too. So we have some teachers that work in the district that are responsive classroom training. And when you walk into the classroom, you see students, like I would be a student in the classroom along with Kazmira, and she answers a question, and I would say to Mr. Weidra, I really like what Kazmira just said about that, but I'd like to add to that. That's where it's really powerful. I mean, it gives you goosebumps to see when kids are modeling this for their peers.
Any other questions from everybody?
I think it's a really great program, and I think the value of it is as kids. I'm getting recorded.
Yeah, I think we're okay with
we're
that.
okay.
I think we can put the mics down.
You just like the microphone. So I think it's really important as kids get into middle school and we see them start to mature and maybe test the boundaries. I think starting this in grade school is really important. My question for you is, do you feel like you have good, consistent participation amongst all of your teachers as administrators in each of your schools?
I'm not good. Can I grab the mic?
If you want. Whatever you need.
Yeah, I can speak to, yes. In any organization, you have people that jump on board right away, and some people that are a little bit slow to get on board with things. But after the end of our third year of implementation, we really have, I would say, almost all the staff I would say all of the staff on board. And it all goes back to recognizing that they realize the importance of this, and they're seeing the celebration assemblies that we're having, and they want their students to be recognized, and raffles that we're having. So, we're some a little bit slower getting on board than others, sure, but, eventually you get on board and you see something working, and they're seeing, wow, these teachers really don't have these behavior issues in their classroom. What are you doing? They reach out, and, it becomes contagious. So I would say we have really good participation.
I think it's a good mentoring opportunity for those that might be afraid or are not used to doing it. If they have a teacher that has really good classroom management, they can give those tips to someone who's new and say, why don't you have these outbursts or problems? Maybe they could use it that way. I don't know, but that's a really good point. Yeah.
I would also say, like, if you think about any type of implementation, if you think about, like, I'm math and focus or anything, it's almost like you're looking at that, like, 2-year process of, like, where that first year you're getting out kinks and you're finding, what's working and what's not, and you're coming back. And so I do feel like there are those teachers, like Todd said, that jump right on, board, and they're confident and they're implementing and they're executing it. So I would say across the board, like, we feel pretty confident. I know I can speak for our two schools right now that I feel pretty confident in terms of teachers explicitly teaching and reinforcing and getting on board with the celebrations. I think that I feel pretty confident with the student support form and the positive recognition form this year and how it's gone, and I feel like next year it's just going to improve and get better. You know, and so I just, overall, we've talked about this at the DLT, that the way it kind of caught on within most of the schools, you know, was pretty amazing. That it just kind of spread, and you know, a lot of it it happened with direction, but some of it kind of just bloomed organically too within teachers, just kind of recognizing a need for it. So I feel really good about where we're going, and I feel really good about exploring that meat piece, you know, and talking about the teacher language moving forward.
And I think everyone knows that to do an initiative like this, to really implement something really district-wide, this is something I had the opportunity to inherit, and I would say I was so pleasantly, not surprised, but just really pleased that I believe this really exists, is being implemented at all 5 of our schools, that there's a lot of consistency, that there's a lot of opportunity for our children to hear that same language. You know, it's new enough that we haven't sort of seen it grow all the way up to Hauser. It's happening at Hauser, but I really do think this is the kind of thing that can start to change culture and climate overall for the long haul. For all children, and I think it's incredibly powerful. And I just really also want to thank Casimir and Todd both, because we know it takes leadership, and we also know it takes a guiding team. And I had an opportunity to sit with the PBSS team just a couple weeks ago, and I really think that team that's made up Meredith, and it's a lot of the social workers, a lot of the psychologists, people you would expect to be leaders, but absolutely classroom teachers. And so I was really excited, because we know also that really people have to own it and want to do it, and if it's just top down, it's not going to work. So a lot of leadership, a lot of really kind of that organically grown, a really wonderful guiding team, and I think it really absolutely matters for kids. So.
Can I say one thing? I was reminded of, we had a presentation, especially for the new board members, on the next generation science standards from Mrs. Esposito at Hauser and some of the other teachers there, and I saw little pieces of this when they were discussing you know, quote unquote, arguing a point or a point of view about a theory. Like, and the children were taught, and it's on the walls in their classroom. I heard what you said about this, but I'm coming from it from a different point of view, and I think this is why it happened, instead of, well, you're crazy, that's not right. And I like the way it was on the walls, and they talk about this constructive, because scientists debate, and that's the point, and it was a constructive debate, and I think part of those things, I'm kind of excited to see how they can embed even those kind ways of debating and discussing into the content. So that was nice to hear. And that's junior high, which is hard to get in there and do that. So
well,
that
what
was,
you're saying is definitely power of words. That's what this whole book study is about. And there's more than to go from there. But like I said, just at that starting point, and just getting that awareness next year, and having teachers, you know, be cognizant of explicitly teaching that language, because we can't. We're working with children, right? We have to assume that, you know, that a child doesn't know unless he or she has been explicitly taught, right? And I try to tell that to my teachers or my parent population. It's like, children have lived like this much life. So, you know, so they're going to make mistakes. So we like to consider them fruitful mistakes. Like, we have to grow from them. And, you know, in teaching and explicitly teaching those conversation strategies and how to talk to one another and listen to one another, those pieces are critical for, I think, any kind of future success.
right. Well, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, bravo. We're going to move on to the District 96 Teacher Evaluation and Performance Evaluation Review Act, known as PARA. We have Ms. Brownlow, and we have Mr. House here.
Mrs. Corbin.
And this is, for those of you that, just to review, there was an ongoing committee last year, and they've been working along many hours at countless meetings and documents. So it's an ongoing process. I think that's important to know. It's not complete by any means, but they're working out what's right for us. So
we're only in year one.
Yeah.
Mr. House and I sort of co-facilitate the group together, and so he'll chime in when he feels there's something he wants to cheerlead about over here, but we're here to gather really to represent the work of the committee. And just as Casimir, Ms. Foreman, and Mr. Jimmy are leaving around this whole PBSS, all of this stuff fits together, and I think Mrs. Cliver's point is really, really important, that much of our curriculum now and the work we're asking students to do is collaborative, and that's one of those 7 skills out there that they say are getting you college and career ready, is to be able to collaborate, because all our environments require it, no matter what kind of work we're doing. And so building that ability to talk to one another, engage in conversation, to have different perspectives and points of view that can be expressed without being shut down is really, really important. And I think our teacher evaluation system is sort of also building that capacity between teachers and administrators in a way that we can also model that same set of skills as grown-ups. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about where we are with this. We are finishing year 1 of our implementation of what was required. So in this presentation, the things that we're going to address tonight are the review of the actual system that we put into place and some teacher feedback related to it. And then we're going to share some revisions that came out of the teacher feedback and out of the committee's work for next year. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of teacher shared ownership in the process, the efficiency that we're looking at with respect to some of those revisions, and then the student growth component. And for new board members, I'm going to go do a little bit of a review for you so you know where we came from and where we are today. So, teacher evaluation in Illinois, there was a scaffolded implementation for school districts that happened over the last 4 years. As a district that was not flagged by the state for any kind of improvement, we were not required to implement the new teacher evaluation process or system until this school year. So when I came on board in 15-16, Mr. Howes and I sat down and looked at, in the transition, some of the things they had started to work on as what we called our para action team. PAT is the acronym that's used here, lots of acronyms here in education. But the para action team had started some work on looking at how the current process could transition to the new requirements related to this process, outlined by the Performance Evaluation Review Act, which is the law that mandated the change. There are 2 components to the teacher evaluation system. There is what is called professional practice, which is 70% of the evaluation. That is really a set of standards with which teachers need to demonstrate their competencies, and they cross over 4 domains: planning and preparation, the classroom environment, instruction, and professional responsibilities. There are 22 components within that framework that the teachers are responsible for. And as you'll see, it's a process to get it up and running and implemented. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The state of Illinois' default model for the framework is written by Charlotte Danielson, who is one of the researchers around what does good teaching look like. Her framework was not originally written as a teacher evaluation plan. I think that's important to know. It was written as a professional growth tool for teachers with a set of competencies. And because of the reform work in teacher evaluation, it was picked up as sort of a cornerstone for measuring teachers against standards because of how it does improve professional practice in the classroom and ultimately student achievement. So that is one piece of it. The other part of the evaluation process is based on student growth. That's only 30% of the evaluation. So we have to recognize that the professional practices are the meat and bones of the evaluation plan, and student growth is sort of, the extra frosting on the cake. It's a piece of what happens. It's something very important that we need to pay attention to, but it's not the bulk of the evaluation process. Student growth in Illinois, they require 2 measures that be examined for every teacher. You are required to establish a joint committee. So in our district, we have 3 administrators and 3 teachers that sit on that joint committee, and we meet to review anything that's questionable within the evaluation plan, any concerns, any, by a teacher or an administrator, comes to the group to be reviewed, and we have to make a decision. And you always have to have an equal number of administrators and an equal number of teachers on your joint committee. So, from there, as we've implemented, we wanted to really reach back out to our staff. This is a very new process. As you heard, 4 domains, 22 components. That's a lot to keep track of for teachers. So we wanted to know how they were responding to the system. So this first slide in your staff survey, we asked, will the new system, from your perspective, help to improve teaching? Knowing that we're in year one of implementation, sort of forward thinking, do you see this as something that will improve teaching? And you can see that, 77% of the teachers, we had 132 responses, by the way, out of about 180 teachers that could be evaluated on the framework. And so that's a pretty good response rate right there. So people are definitely interested in sharing their feedback. And 77% of the teachers were feeling like it's definitely going to improve teaching. And there's still that small percentage which we need to pay attention to that aren't quite sure where it fits in yet. Some of that, a few of those responses, I had some individual feedback, and it's getting the right framework tool for positions like social work and coaching. So we have teachers out there that are working with teachers and not directly with students. So we want to make sure we have the right tool in place to improve their practices when they're not directly in front of students in the classroom, but they're working in a supporting role. So that's some of that feedback. The next question we asked was, did the system improve the quality of your instructional conversations regarding the observation experience with your administrators? So when you're debriefing with your administrator after they come in and watch a lesson, did this framework give you a tool for improving the nature of that conversation? Because ultimately we would like the teachers to own the reflections on their lessons. We're not in their classrooms every day. We need teachers to be able to reflect and look at what could I have done better, what could have, how could I have reached more students? And so ultimately we want teachers to own that reflective practice and build their skills around that. So we want to know, is this improving the nature of those conversations that build those skills for you as a reflective practitioner? And so again, 74% of our teachers are saying yes, this is definitely improving the nature of our conversations, with another 21% saying somewhat, and then only 7 teachers saying no impact at all. That's pretty encouraging. So this is where you're going to see we still have more work to do, and that's to be expected. This is not shocking to us, to Bill or to myself. We asked, how would you rate your ability to identify artifacts? So within the 4 domains, teachers have the ability to share their own evidence around meeting the standards. And with 22 components in 4 domains, trying to identify those things for teachers sometimes can be pretty overwhelming. What is the right artifact? What is the best artifact? How many artifacts? And I think Bill wants to comment on that for a minute.
I think part of this as well, the newness of this section of evaluation. Previously, evaluation was somebody comes in, watches me teach, then later we have a discussion. At the end of the year, we have a different discussion about the whole year, but there was never in the past, okay, I have to make sure that I'm presenting information about, I went to these conferences, I took these classes, this is my planning process for my classes. That may have been a part of it for some principals and for some teachers, but this really begins to codify that for everyone. And so that is, at least the way I see it, a reason why there are people who are having difficulty identifying appropriate things, because this was really the first time we've had to do that. And so the first time you do anything is a little more difficult. So hopefully as we go through in the future, it will get easier.
I want to add something.
Bill, do you think it's because there's 22, so it's very wide ranging?
Yes, that is definitely a part of it.
It's hard to pick out something that really any one thing that summarizes.
Yes. And we do in the plan have a list like for 1A, here are possibilities for evidence. For 1B, here are possibilities for evidence. And many of them cross. So, I planned a unit lesson on opera. So that shows my planning and preparation. That shows, I can fit that into 1A, 1C, 1D, and that's just one piece of evidence. I think that was a little difficult now, again, because we're not used to thinking this way proactively. The other thing is a lot of people at this point are, it was summative evaluation time and we went, oh my God, I need my artifacts. So it was a process of looking back on the year instead of starting the year and saying, I'm going to collect these things as I know I have them coming up. So that will also make the process much easier in the future, is knowing, oh, parent communication is an important part of the rubric. So I need to make sure that, you know, that I at least have a folder with the emails that I've had, that I keep a log of the parents that I call, and that way it's much easier to collect the evidence proactively than reactively.
It's harder to do it in retrospect.
Yes.
And I think some of that too, Mr. Marholt, is familiarity with the framework and the rubric. So they all have the books, they were trained on it, but it's a lot.
It's
So-
different when you have to actually do
to operationalize it. So as they become more familiar, that process will become easier.
Or they might present, I know we've had presentations
Right.
from staff and teachers at board
Right,
meetings, and
that's
that's something new that they might be able to add.
Correct.
Yes.
I don't know which domain.
Professional
but
responsibility.
Thank you.
Enforcement.
But I think that's
That's a point.
kind of encouraging, yeah. But 22
yeah,
is
it's
a
all
lot.
of those things. There's a lot of things, you know, teaching is, we always like to use that word complex. Instead of scaffold, that's my new word, Mr. Skolnick, it's complex, complexity. It's a very complex profession, and you know, the framework really honors that complexity, and it's the first time we've really asked teachers to think about the complexity of what they do beyond just teaching students every single day. And all of these things within that framework impact ultimately what happens with students. So I think it is a process. I have to say though, this committee is really driven by the teachers, the group that works. It's actually more teachers than administrators. A lot more teachers and administrators. And so we really try to consider the feedback to make sure that they're getting what they need to focus on improvement, because that's the ultimate goal of a process like this. And I think you've heard us mention the level of excellence. This framework has a 4-point system basically, and it has what's unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, and excellent, right? And the excellent in this framework really represents what excellent used to be in the former evaluation system.
Proficient.
You mean
I mean
proficient.
proficient, excuse me, thank you. See,
You're
you know.
welcome. Yeah, oh.
Yeah, what?
Oh, I
Proficient.
know that
Because,
part.
yeah, we know, because
I have many discussions with many people.
in the prior system, proficient meant teacher, 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 teacher was doing this, teacher was doing this, teacher was doing this, teacher was doing this, and that excellence was excellent. And if you have a whole district full of proficient teachers on the new framework, you would be like doing a happy dance everywhere, because it's really difficult to even maintain that. And then when you're looking at excellence in this framework, the ownership shifts from the teacher to the student. So it's all about what the students are doing. So are the students owning the discussion in the classroom, similar to what you've heard today? Are the students engaged in the work? Do they have a voice in your classroom? Are the students helping to shape the community that you're creating in your classroom? Are you responding to student inquiry in your classroom? So what is the student's role? And that's a very different lens to be looking through when you look at that shift. So it's really hard, as Charlotte Danielson likes to say, and I like to quote her all the time, people tend to dabble in excellence and live in proficient in her framework. And that's why prior to it becoming an evaluation tool, it was a professional growth tool never intended for evaluation, because it's supposed to be thought of as a continuum, that you're always striving for that excellence, but to maintain excellence across 22 components, you would have to be almost superhuman to do so.
It would have to be.
You would have to be superhuman.
To do it.
Because it is just that rigorous in each of the areas.
Yeah.
Right? So that brings us to, how would you rate the use of your framework? What a great segue for improving instruction. So we looked at, how are you using this to improve your instruction? And that's where we're just on the end. We're just starting out to really begin to use it that way, because we're beginning to understand it. We're beginning to recognize, as Mrs. Kleiber pointed out, what does that really mean? What does that look like for me? How does that relate? So the encouraging news is people see the potential in it for improving their practices and improving their conversations with their administrators, and those things are happening. But to operationalize it where they're actually self-actualized within the framework, it's going to take us probably, I wouldn't even say one more year, I'd say probably 2. What's interesting is new hires that are coming out of universities have been using the framework as part of their student teaching evaluation process, and they're much more familiar with it. So as we bring new people into the system, they're already oriented to it. And they actually help some of our veterans.
Yes.
Some of our first and second year teachers that we had this year were able to share with veterans, like, oh, when I went through it with my student teaching experience, here are some things I used as artifacts, or here are some things I thought about with student engagement, or here are some ways I improved my practices. So that's been kind of cool to watch, actually. So anything you want to add to that? Got it, okay. So here are 2 revisions. Based on all that feedback, here are some things we want to do to help the teachers really own the process more and be more of a partner in it. One of the ways we can do that is through a self-assessment piece, and this was highly encouraged by the teachers. They're like, please let us, and we, both sides, the administration and the teachers on the committee, were like, this would be really valuable and improve sort of the teachers' use of the framework and our ability to understand what teachers are doing. So we added a self-assessment component to both the formal observation process, which is a piece of the full evaluation process, where teachers will get a chance to go through the framework rubric and score themselves and think about where they were in their observation, and their administrator will do the same, and they'll share the feedback with one another prior to the post-conference. And then when they go to talk with their administrators, they'll talk about where they see the differences or discrepancies. And so they can really pinpoint then areas of improvement and where they want to focus and celebrate those things that were real strengths in a lesson. And the same will be true of the summative evaluation, which Mr. Howes just spoke of at the end, really having teachers go through each of the components and self-rate with their own evidence. And that is really helpful to share with an administrator, and the administrator will share their draft. Because sometimes, as Mr. Howes mentioned, you might not see a piece of evidence that a teacher is able to then share. And so you're able to have a conversation before you determine a final evaluation rating, which is still the administrator's responsibility at the end.
I think one thing, I know this, part of this self-assessment that will be helpful is to facilitate a conversation, which for those of us who have been around for former evaluation systems, conversation was rarely a part of it. It was more sit down, here's the paper, read it, do you have questions, sign up. And so this, the beginning of conversations is an odd feeling for some of us who have been through former evaluation systems. And so it is this, we're hopeful that being able to self-reflect first will then give a better conversation. A better conversation could be had between the teacher and the administrator.
And the idea is that it's really, ultimately, the administrator is the one who has to determine the rating, but we want it to be a shared process. Because the only way a teacher is going to improve is if they can also recognize and identify in themselves what they're doing really, really well and want to celebrate with others and share with peers to improve someone else's practice, and where they have an opportunity to learn from someone else. So we're trying to create this culture where we're always examining where we can get better, where we can continuously improve, and celebrate where we're really great. Because teaching is different every single year when you get a new group of students in front of you. You're never done. You know, people use the analogy of laundry. You know, you get one load folded and you got another one sitting in front of the washing machine. So that's sort of how it is with teaching and learning. You know, every time you get a new group of students, you're trying to figure them out. And so what worked one year, you can't just pull it out of your backpack and deliver it the same exact way. You have to respond to the students. So we're hoping that this is really, these self-assessment pieces will maximize that opportunity for growth for teachers. And then we also made some revisions just simply for efficiency. We combined a bunch of forms and reduced the paperwork. We found some redundancies in our work and places where we could eliminate things. We had 2 sets of growth forms for student growth. We combined them into one single form where you can just put a midpoint check. We have a separate midpoint form, so we consolidated those into one. We spread out formal and informal observations for teachers who are tenured because they're on a 2-year evaluation cycle. So by spreading those out, they'll get the opportunity for feedback in both years rather than compacted into a single year, which is the way it used to be. It also helps the administrator distribute the amount of meetings that they're having. And then there is that recommendation that you've already heard about to move to an electronic tool for collecting a lot of this evidence. And it's a two-way tool. It's a tool that teachers and administrators would both utilize and share to be able to house evidence, which that also helps because the administrator can say, oh, I don't see much in here, and flag somebody to say, you know, are there some things you'd like to add or things that I don't have that you'd like to add? So the tool works as a communication tool as well as kind of a data warehouse for the system. So those are some of our big recommendations for efficiency. We want principals to be out in our classrooms, not behind their desks. And so we feel like if we don't adjust what we're doing for efficiency, the management of the system can be a bit burdensome. And then back to student growth. So the outcomes that we as a PAC committee identified with respect to looking at student growth are on this next slide. We have some guiding questions that we ask teachers to answer as part of developing their tools for student growth. And you see them there. Does your assessment scoring system tell you where your students are in relationship to the expectations and learning outcomes? Can you analyze those results to make informed decisions about your instruction and what students have mastered or not? That's the purpose of looking at student assessment when you're trying to see if students are growing. We're using what's called a student learning objective, SLO for short, in our district for these conversations and for these student growth components. SLOs are unique assessments to a grade level or a department that are commonly administered for every student who takes Mr. House's fourth grade music class. They would get the same assessment. And Mrs. Lawrence's fourth grade music students would take the same assessment, and then Mrs. Lawrence and Mr. House can have a conversation about that student work and look at the expectations for students and make sure that we're providing an equitable and consistent experience for students. And then also looking at where students are meeting their expectations, where they're exceeding, and where they're not. So is it rigorous enough? Do we have a rigorous enough program? Are we getting the growth we expected? Is it too rigorous? Are we having so many students not meet expectations that our instruction's not on target, or we're not doing enough instructionally to get at the target? So it's a lot of great conversation about teaching and learning that happens, not just for the purposes of teacher evaluation, but for improving practice. The impact on student learning, this is the first time in this district, and I've had many teachers share this with me over the course of this year, and I know Mr. House has had some too. It's the first time ever that our teachers have sat down as a grade level team or a department to look at a common piece of student work from our curriculum. It's curriculum based. Other than standardized tests, there has been nothing that's been established as sort of a common thing that they've intentionally talked about. It doesn't mean they haven't been doing common things, but there's been no platform to have a discussion about those experiences, to really look at how our kids are learning and growing. So now when you come in on a day when we're working on this kind of work, they're in teams and they've got student work at the table and they're talking about what it looks like. And did Mr. House have the same expectation as Mrs. Lawrenson did when they administered this? And you know, are we defining what a District 96 student should be able to do in the classrooms together? So that has been really powerful.
And I think as a specials teacher, it's very impactful for us as well, because classroom teachers have usually had standardized tests to talk about, and you know, this really brings home, okay, look, we've done this, now we have it, and we have this platform to use it, to say, oh, you know what, my kids aren't articulating on this piece that they had to play for their SLO. How did your kids do? And you know, we're both finding, oh, you know what, this is something we're working on because neither of us got the articulation scores we wanted. But you know, in pitch, they're doing great. So it was very helpful, and I think for those of us who don't have other venues, such as standardized tests in the past, this is especially useful.
Yeah, and I think
how are the teachers picking the SLO that's universal across those multiple classrooms? Is it something that's supposed to both challenge and the students and then also reflect where they're at, or
So the way the process works, there's some parameters that we've given teachers. We've asked them to choose assessments that are going to measure student mastery of intended learning outcomes after a unit of instruction. And in unit, like the shortest in length that you would really want to be looking at is 6 weeks, because you want to be able to respond formatively as students are learning, to be able to help them grow. So we've said, a unit of instruction really shouldn't be any less than 6 weeks. So that's sort of been a minimum unit of instruction. They could go as long as a trimester if they chose to as a team, if that's what they wanted to look at over time, depending on what skills and outcomes they're looking at. And they're pre-assessing students at the beginning of the instructional period that they've chosen and getting a baseline. And then they're bringing that data and student work to the table to say, okay, what do we hope our expectation is? When a kid reaches mastery, what does that look like? But the beauty of the system we're using is if a kid gives you a pre-assessment and they've already mastered 80% of what you're about to teach, it tells the teacher they better be doing something different or that student's not going to grow. So what's nice is they can set a target beyond mastery for kids who are showing baseline performance that's already there. So it's also helping to inform instruction to say, okay, I've got to look a little differently at these groups of students as I'm trying to grow them. So it's not like they set targets only for the kids who are at mastery. They're setting targets for every level of student in their classroom to be able to demonstrate growth over the end of the unit of instruction. And so together they're looking at what does the baseline look at like across, what is the minimum expectation for those students who have no prerequisite knowledge at all, what would we expect minimally for a typical student to master, that's going to be the growth target for that group, and so on. So it's a scaffolded approach to setting targets, and that, Mr. Marhol transitioned me right to the last point on the slide very nicely. Good job. Thank you. It's not like standardized data that you aggregate to monitor overall student learning at a district level or grade level like MAP would be when I do my presentation in the fall, or PARC, or even some of our progress monitoring tools that we might use that are more standardized. That data is easily aggregated because it's normed and it's based on, more generalized nature of how students learn and grow. This data is unique to the grade or department. It cannot really be aggregated because it's examined at a classroom or grade level, and it's differentiated to inform the instruction based on where all these kids are starting. So the baselines could be different for different students in the room. That makes sense.
And they could also be different for different teachers. So my classroom of students is at a different level. My fourth grade at Hollywood is at a different place than one of the fourth grades at Central, which is at a different place than the other fourth grade. So each classroom and each student, then you see, okay, this is where they're starting. This is my expectation of where they should be. So someone that starts at 0 should get to whatever point, but someone who starts at 80 should obviously be at a different point than the student at 0, and not plateau, not just stay at 80. You would, there are some children who are very good at recorder at the beginning, and so they get different, on the SLO, they might be, okay, we're not going to have that student count toward the SLO because they've already met it at the pretest. But that means I know, okay, they need to be playing different songs, they need to be, there needs to be different instruction for those students.
Yeah. So it works twofold. It works to help us differentiate for our students and personalize that learning experience, but it also helps us to know which students aren't even close to being at that minimum level of mastery that we would expect, and so how do we need to support them to get there. Some people think that because you're doing an SLO that it's not rigorous enough, or there's no standardized measure, so how do you know it's really working, or that teachers are using it with integrity. But there's a ton of research out there that says when you are looking at work in this way collaboratively with your peers in a group, that has a bigger impact on student learning than any analysis of a standardized assessment, because it's real, it's reflective of what you're trying to do with your students. So We're not setting the bar low. If we were, then we'd take those kids who are already mastering on the pretest and say, sorry, we're not going to even worry about you. We're just going to teach the ones that don't have that. We're not doing that. We're seeing what's called an adjusted growth model, which is one of the models that the state of Illinois gives you as an option. You could use what's called simple growth and not worry about that and just say, hey, I want 75% of my kids to hit the target, and then that would be considered acceptable. But we're not taking that approach here in District 96. We're taking the adjusted growth approach where we're really setting targets for every single child. So what is the rationale around why? I just started to tell you that, but get ahead of myself. Common assessments is a best practice, and it is known to improve student learning. Common assessment systems do take multiple years to develop, so we know we have some revisions to do. There were some of our assessments where we thought it didn't really measure exactly what we thought it would, so we need to revise that and go back and revisit it to look at it. We know that they're aligned to our teaching and provide information about student learning, that they provide that context for the collaborative conversation around common expectations for all our students in District 96, which I think is really, really important. I had a conversation the other day with a teacher where the class that teacher has is not reflective of the average District 96 standardized profile. So the instruction that needs to happen for that particular group of 22 is different than maybe the instruction that has to happen with a group that's at a different. So when you look at your median scores and where the students are falling, depending on the makeup of your classroom, you need to provide different instruction. And then lastly, they are meaningful to the teachers, as you heard Mr. House already express, and do inform their instruction. So if I were to say to Mr. House, you must use map assessment as your student growth measure, measuring reading and math on something like a map assessment wouldn't necessarily inform his practice the way it might a math teacher's practice. So thus we went this route. And we're hoping that over time we will continue to see improved student success through this process. Question?
I just have one comment. When I taught at secondary education, I noticed that our teams were given specific times to meet, and I think that's more of a secondary model, and I'm happy to see at the elementary level and the junior high that they're having those conversations, because that gets your team in a place of consistency, and I think that's not a bad thing at all to have them talking. Because sometimes you're in your room and you're in your bubble, and to get the teachers comfortable with each other, whether they're a new teacher or a veteran teacher, I think is really good. And I noticed as a parent, I don't know if you guys noticed too, but when you see self-assessments in the grade book, we're asking our students to do that. So to ask you guys to do that, I think is fair and appropriate. If we're, it's a nice parallel, I think. And we're trying to do that as a board too, what are our expectations and what do we think? So
And
I think that's a nice.
Yeah, and I think Mrs. Kleiber makes a really important point. When we're in silos doing our work, it used to be that we just close our door and do it, and we would always think like, we had it, we got it, no one's telling us we don't. So it also makes us really vulnerable, and I want to.
It's very scary to talk to your
teacher. You pointed out, my kids didn't articulate the way I expected. How about yours? But the beauty of that is if someone did have success in an area where someone else didn't, they can talk about what strategies instructionally they used to get the kids there, and then that teacher's going back to the classroom going, I'm going to try that, and maybe I'll have greater success in that particular area by just sharing with each other what we're doing, so we're no longer just keeping it to ourselves, but we're able to then share it with each other and improve practice across the district. So. But it's hard, it's not our nature to put ourselves out there, and continuous improvement and growth mindset are really difficult things to actualize in a system, and I feel like our teachers are really taking some risks. And again, as they talked about PBSS, you have your ones that are jumping out there going, someone give me feedback, and then you have those that are like, here, look at this, but I think as we build that trust in the system through this process, we have just enormous opportunity to improve student learning. Anything else you want to add? 5K?
No, good job.
But it is nice to work so collaboratively with teachers, I have to say.
Yeah,
I feel like this committee is amazing to work with.
It's been a good committee to work with.
Yeah.
I wonder, out of the system that we're using, how much of it is coming from the state as a guideline? How much of it is coming from the program that we've decided to implement and how much is coming from local innovation or the committee that you were mentioning and things like that?
A third. I don't know.
Right. Well, I would say the Danielson model is, that's
state default.
That's state default, which when we first started our conversations, we looked at it, we were like, well, since it's the default, if we don't agree on something, that's what we're doing. So let's look at it. We tended to like it because it is a good, rigorous system. So why don't we adopt that? So while it was state suggested, I guess, we did look at it and said, it's a good program and we would like to try it. So.
And if you did your own within that, like you chose a different framework, you would have to demonstrate that the rigor and the standards were similar to the one that they identified. And there were a couple other tools out there.
Were 2 or 3.
But I think most people gravitate towards Danielson because the language in it is pretty clear and teacher-friendly, whereas some of the other models, I would say it's more theoretical or research-friendly. So I think this spoke to teachers, easy for them to understand. With respect to the implementation, it's pretty standard, the processes that there are some state mandates, like every teacher has to have a formal observation every 2 years if you're tenured, every year if you're not. The informal observations, the way we structured some of those, we had some flexibility in sort of how the feedback was going to come and whether or not there was a meeting after those kinds of nuances. But the structure requires, the state law does require that you have both formal and informal observations. So within the state, I would say the state framework overlies every piece of our plan, but then within that framework, we had some decisions we could make. The growth was a little looser in terms of how the state defined that. They defined that you must have 2 assessments, that one had to be a grade level or department assessment, and one could be actually an individual teacher assessment, just me individually, without even talking to Bill. But we decided that in our district, we wanted common things so we could have these conversations. So it was a little looser.
But I think it's also another great example of leadership and a committee and a group that really worked together to build that capacity. But I also think one of the things we know about PARA is that it was a mandate, and I think that this committee has done a great job of taking a mandate and making it meaningful. And I think that's really been the challenge to school districts is if we have to do it, let's do it in a way that makes sense for kids. And I think this is a committee that's really kept a focus on that.
And having discussed this quite often over at the local with a lot of districts in the area, I know how our committee, I'm very glad I'm on our committee because we do work well together, both between the union and teachers and administration, as well as within both groups, which is not always the case. So that's been fantastic to hear other people's stories and know what our situation is. So that's a good thing.
It's absolutely a complex process, as you can, I think,
sure.
Bill and Meryl did a great job certainly distilling it down, but it's complex.
And I think one of the most important things we have to remember is that there is still an accountability here, right? No matter what, it's an evaluation system, and it comes with accountability. And I think what's awesome about what we're doing is the accountability is definitely there, but we're trying to make it a professional experience where teachers can learn and grow and do better for kids. Because if it just becomes something that is not meaningful and you're just waiting for the administrator to hand you a piece of paper, nothing has to change about your practice and ultimately impact students. And I think the excitement about being treated like a professional, while scary, is also exciting for our staff. Because I see our staff wanting to be the best they can be. And saying to their principals, and I'm sure they can affirm, how do I get to that place of excellence? What do I need to do differently with my students to move myself into that zone? So they're definitely committed to it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, we're going to move on to the K-8 math implementation update now. If you'll notice, there's Math and Focus for the elementary grades and Carnegie for Hauser. So just to note that distinction between the two programs, there's a two-tiered system.
So in your board packet, you had links to videos that we created, which are on our website, so please, public, go watch them. I will tell you, it gives you the glimpse in the day of a day in the life of a math student here in District 96. Both there's a Math and Focus one that we posted earlier, and I did a presentation on that earlier this year. And then we just recently posted the one for the middle school on Carnegie, which the board had in their packets if you viewed it. If you haven't viewed it, please, please, please take a look at it. We really tried to demonstrate how instruction has changed in a mathematics classroom with the implementation of our programs. Carnegie at the middle school is in year 2, and the teachers have become a lot more comfortable. Based on feedback from districts using the materials are shifting slightly next year. They're rearranging some things to make them tighter for students. They're redoing some of the workbook pages based on students working in the book and not having enough room, things like that. They also are providing more conceptual models for students, particularly in the 6th grade. So one of the cool things that the middle school math program has recognized is that bar modeling, which if any of you have a Math and Focus student and they're from 3rd grade and up, you've definitely seen it. 2nd graders get introduced at the beginning. That is a strategy, a mathematical strategy, conceptual one that can work with almost any kind of mathematical problem that involves a part and whole, whether it be decimal, fractions, computation, whatever it might be. And they're now embedding that in the middle school program in grade 6 for proportion and ratio teaching. So our kids are going to have a nice vertical alignment on the foundational strategy that is showing up in our Math and Focus program. I've talked about this before, the 8 mathematical practices, which are perseverance and involve problem solving and being able to explain your thinking, are embedded in both programs and very heavily in both programs. So there's a lot of social math when you have to articulate your thinking. Mrs. Clyburn talked about the inquiry science, but math is the same way. You have to demonstrate how you solve the problem and someone else can challenge that or express a different way to get there. We still are emphasizing fact fluency, and I want to be clear about that. That is part of the Common Core Standards, is that students become efficient with their mathematical thinking, but they're getting to that fluency in ways that you didn't get at it when we were kids. We did rote memorization to get to fluency. Students in these programs are learning strategies that will help them recognize the fluency and then build upon patterns. So little students who are working in kindergarten and 1st grade with these 10 frames where they have 5 dots lined up at the top row, 5 dots lined up at the bottom row, and it's framed out. They start visualizing groups of 10. They start learning their math facts to 10 by visualizing having 3 at the top, how many are blank, things like that. So eventually they get to the point where they know the algorithms and they know with automaticity. So we're still working and striving towards that, but we're doing it in a different kind of way. It's not necessarily your bubblegum math test that teachers used to give without any practice or conceptual way to lead up to that. It's very hands-on. The student feedback has been getting better and better. It was great to begin with, but it's even getting better as the kids are getting more familiar and more comfortable with the way it's being taught. We're investing a lot in professional development, and as new board members, I really want you to understand that, and I think Mr. Housley talked a little bit about this, the teacher evaluation too. You can't just roll something out in a year and expect that it's going to stick. Especially when it's new. Your first year, pacing is off because you're learning it. So you're definitely going to face some pacing challenges as you're learning the program. And it requires that continued support to execute it well. So we do heavy vendor training in that first year to help us understand the content and how it fits into our instruction. Year 2, we move more into a coaching model. So last year, the middle school got a lot of coaching in their program, and they'll continue with that. This year, we keep weaning it down, a few less days every year. So next year, the middle school will be down to 3 coaching days. We were at 8 last year. We were at a lot of, I think we had 12 professional development days the year before. So we wean it down, and it does shift. Elementary is in a similar place. They had heavy content training throughout this year to learn that. They're going to wean down the content days to 3 times for each grade level next year for just a half a day, from what was 2 full days this year for every grade level over the course of the year. But then we're going to move more into a coaching model, particularly at grades 3 through 5, where the bulk of the shift has happened in instruction. and really helping them to look at more of the practice side of things, not so much the content piece, but now how do those practices support the content. So that is something it'll show up in the budget line as part of the professional development work that we're doing. But the teachers have all said, since I've been here a whole 2 years, thank you for not doing a once and done. Because when you do a once and done, you don't master it. And so if the one piece of feedback that I've heard on an ongoing basis is thank you for shifting your budget to reflect the support and training we need, rather than giving us stuff. Because they had lots of stuff and then not a lot of support. And so they'd rather see less stuff and more support. So when I came in, that was a big shift that we made. We redid the allocations based on teacher feedback to provide more support and not just stuff. So I feel like that feedback, I continue to hear that. Thank you, keep doing that. Thank you, keep doing that. And then the next one you hear is time, but none of us ever have enough time. And much to Mrs. Claver's point earlier, we're trying to figure out how to build more time in for teachers to work together, to have these conversations as we move on through the years. So it's a pleasure to work with these teachers. It's amazing to watch what they're doing. Please watch the videos. Watch the videos, they're really great. Do you have any questions on the math? Okay, we'll keep tuning in. That's the other thing at a board level. One of my commitments was we don't implement and never tell you ahead what's going on. If we find gaps or concerns, we're going to be articulating those. But right now, I shared this earlier in the year for the new board members, RB can tell who our students are in their math classrooms because they're willing to take risks. They're talking about their math. They said, we know who had Carnegie and who didn't. And I got pressure from another district.
And can we remind the public too, that's what they use at RB?
Yeah, RB does use Carnegie math as well in their core classrooms. And so our students are experiencing the same model as they get to RB, but they can tell who the students are who come from Hauser because of the way they're interacting in their math classrooms. So that was cool to hear.
It's actually a very scientific approach. I was thinking about the lesson plans I used to do and problem solving and manipulatives that you could use those for metrics and measurement, the same way you'd use it for decimals.
And what's cool with our science, and you've heard about it already, is now iQuest at the middle school with the inquiry base, they're looking at the math and they're looking at sort of some alignments around when they're doing measurement and data and how that's impacting, and they're sharing ideas. And I know Mr. Harvalas did a project with both science and STEM to kind of coordinate the graphing and measurement and data piece, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, any kind of interaction with algebraic skills early on can only help a chemistry or a physics student later. Early is good, yeah.
Chug it along.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so moving on to policy committee. Mr. Hunt, do
All
you
right,
have anything?
Mr. Hunt.
I have nothing to report.
All right, moving on to finance committee. Mr. Regan.
Nothing to report.
All right, so if there's nothing, any questions on those two? Just mention.
Yes, when will we get to see him?
He'll start July 1.
Okay.
He's been at a few of the board meetings, so
Yes.
you met him when you originally hired
Right,
him, and then he's been at a few. I know he will not be at the June 21 meeting, but
Okay.
he will be full-time starting July 1.
Okay.
All right, great. So just make note of the future meeting dates. Our next meeting is June 21st, 2017, the regular business meeting, 6:30 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. Board goes into closed session and return to open session at 7. The July 5th, 2017 Committee of the Whole meeting is canceled. So the next meeting will be July 19th, 2017, regular business meeting, 6:30 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. The August 2nd, 2017 Committee of the Whole meeting is also canceled. And so our meeting in August will be August 16th, 2017, regular business meeting, 6:30 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. So I can adjourn the meeting now, right?